life of love, life of love, with Joy Hilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Creator, God, Universal Force. Thank you for bringing Brent and I together today. I honor his time. I honor his journey. I welcome in my guides and my angels to come forth, my Akashic team to help us bring forth a message with clarity, with intensity, to reach the ears that need to hear and the hearts that need to soften for their highest good. Help us bring forth a message that's needed the most at this time for the advancement of humanity, for the advancement of the things that we need to get through or the things that are keeping us in a vibration. Please help us to clear old patterns or codes that might be restricting our growth. With your permission, I invite Brett's team in, and if they're willing to collaborate, we will produce this episode and with all the love in our hearts to bring forth curiosity of an open mind. And we do this so you may work through us and for us, again, for the highest good. Please take what serves you and leave what doesn't. And so it is. Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather each week to explore what the life of love looks like today. And what continually blows my mind is that it looks different on each day, even in each moment. So it's a constant choice to go toward your highest good, to go toward love and have compassion and love for yourself, even if you feel like you missed, and knowing that it's okay. And they're all here. So I invite you to come with a curious mind as we welcome Brent Michael Phillips to Life of Love. I've been looking forward to this so much. He's an MIT graduate, which is always exciting to have an engineer and a scientific mind come forward to help merge spirituality and science. And it's a gooey place to be. He's been involved with energy healing for many years. He's gone through his own journey of healing, and he's also a best-selling author. So we're going to get into his new ebook about holography, how to triple your income by shaking your hands. So that's going to be a really fun topic. And I'm looking forward to hear how he takes a scientific mindset to help us meet spirituality and quantum physics. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Brent. Thanks for being here.
To be here. This is great.
Well, yeah, your story, I downloaded your book, and it's well written and it's quick. Like, I think I'm halfway through it, and I didn't have a ton of time to read the whole thing, but I got into it enough that it's a fun read, and you feel like you're going down this path with you. So I encourage people to pick that up. It's an ebook, and it's not your first book. You've been guiding people, and you have a very active community on your website. But would you like to share? I guess my first question is, you're involved with website development. The internet was just coming out, and you said, I'm done with my PhD. I'm just going to get right into the workforce. But how did you transition from, building websites for huge companies like Disney to being spiritual? Was it your healing path for your body, or do you think it was all combined with body and soul?
Well, let's just say it wasn't my first choice. As it happens with a lot of people doing this work, a lot of healers especially, it wasn't so much I woke up one day and decided I wanted to be a healer. I didn't pick it. It picked me, as they say. It's a calling, not a career. And had you known me when I was young, it wasn't even on my radar. Never would have imagined I'd do anything like this. Because growing up, I was pretty much your typical nerd. I loved Star Wars and Star Trek and Dungeons and Dragons and video games and all those things, right? And when I was an undergrad at MIT, that's when I discovered the internet. And I was like, wow, there's this amazing worldwide computer network. It's going to change the world, right? And so I made that the focus of my studies. And then when I was in graduate school, I did a lot of really cool stuff. My research group was part of one of the founding members of what's today called the World Wide Web Consortium. I contributed code to the Apache server. And it was, I think, in April of 1994, me and two of my lab mates, we sent the first ever live synchronized audio video stream over the web. So it was a really exciting time. And as you said, I didn't want to stick around to finish my PhD because the gold rush was happening.
Yeah.
right? This was the gold rush of my lifetime. And so I left MIT, moved to California, recruited my lifelong best friend, and started a company making websites. And that was in early 1995. And it was so funny because the very first website I ever built in my entire life was the website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation. So cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
We did the websites for Nissan Motors. We did the first website for Disneyland. So a lot of cool stuff going on. We then started a second company to make video games, but specifically online games. Today they're called MOGs, or massively multiplayer online role-playing games. But back then they were just a dream. And we had a lot of success at first, but I was there at the office pretty much 80 to 100 hours a week. All I did was work. It was nuts. All day, all night, 7 days a week, no breaks, no holidays, no vacations. And I figured I'll sacrifice a couple of years of my life and I'll make millions of dollars. And maybe by the time I'm 30, I'll retire to a tropical island or something, right?
Yeah, it was so exciting. It's such an exciting time because
It
I don't
was.
know if a lot of people have context, but we used to have dedicated devices like the Atari that you plugged in your Atari if you wanted to play video games. You didn't go to your computer. It was like,
Right.
and I remember,
And you had the little cartridges that had the games, right?
yeah, with the games, exactly. And then, yeah, you're just bringing me down memory lane. I remember I took a course in science in the 90s, and my professor said, email me your questions. And I was like, your
How do I do
office
that?
is right
Yeah,
here. Why would I
right.
go to the computer lab to
Yeah.
get you? And I remember it was like a orange matrix screen.
Yeah. Remember when there were some people that printed out all their emails?
Yeah.
I always thought that was hilarious. It's like kind of defeats the purpose, right?
When we were in transition, right? And
Yeah.
so it was such an exciting time that, you could push a button and not have to wait 3 days or 7 days
Yeah,
to get
exactly.
a
And so,
response.
we really thought the sky was the limit. But
Yeah,
the
totally.
the brutal work schedule, long story short, destroyed my health.
Okay.
I suffered really severe repetitive stress injuries, and there was a lot more going on. It took me decades to understand it all. I had contracted Lyme disease on a camping trip I didn't know about. I was suffering from chemical poisoning. I mean, go on and on.
Yeah,
And
that Lyme
so,
disease can really mess people up, and if
can.
it's undiagnosed, you're not the only one. That's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down.
And so I started having a lot of pain, and my ability to work, it went from 100 hours a week to 80 to 60 to 40 to 20 to about 10. I could barely move. I was in so much pain. And long story short, I went to doctors. They sent me to physical therapy and pain drugs and all that. Didn't help me. And after 3 years of physical therapy, I remember I was so excited. I finally got an appointment to see the head doctor at Curlin Joe, which is one of the top physical therapy clinics in the world. And I was like, wow, this guy will know what to do, right? Because at this point, I had had to move in with my parents. I could only drive short distances. I could barely work. I was just in constant pain. It was really a nightmare. And I remember I was so excited to see the doctor, and he's looking at my medical records, and he just goes, well, I'm sorry, son. There's nothing I or anyone can do for you. You'll never be able to get back to work. You'll never be out of pain. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what? And the last thing he said to me before I left his office, he said, son, you got someone that can take care of you until you die?
Oh my
And
God.
he recommended me for lifetime disability, and I was 27 years old. So that was crushing. And so I went to tell my lifelong best friend and business partner, and I figured he'd be all, hey, Brent, we'll get through this together. I got your back. No. He just said, well, if you can't work, you have no place here. So he fired me from the companies I had founded.
I was going to say, weren't you the one who recruited him?
I was, but he had played games with the documents, forged signatures, done all this shady stuff. So basically, he stole the companies from me, fired me. And what I call the cherry on top of the hot fudge sundae, I also found out he had been secretly dating the woman I was crazy in love with. And so he sold the website company for millions of dollars behind my back. And, I had destroyed my body and lost my career to make him rich. And I was left living with my parents, collecting a tiny bit of money on disability, being told there was no hope of recovery. I'd never be out of pain. I could never work again. Essentially, my life was over. And oh yeah, I also lost my lifelong best friend.
Right.
So this was,
Right.
as they say, classic dark night of the soul.
Sure.
So to make a long story very short, I started using drugs, day drinking, suicidal behavior, all these things. I had a friend of mine turn me on to alternative medicine. And at first I was really excited. I'm like, hey, maybe this can work, right? So I started going for acupuncture and the Chinese medicine treatments. And, I did cleanses and I started doing yoga and Pilates and all these things, on and on. Chiropractors, homeopaths, osteopaths, da, da, da. And so for 5 years, I was basically chasing treatment full time, living with my parents, spending the little bit of money I got from disability to pay for treatments and running up a huge credit card debt. And so 5 years later, I wasn't getting any better. And I was so frustrated. Nothing made any difference for me. And I agreed to have an experimental surgery, mainly because my workers' compensation lawyer told me he might be able to get me more money if I had the surgery. And so I was like, okay. And
So you're treating yourself like a lab rat,
yes,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I was so desperate, I said yes. And of course, had the surgery fixed me and cured all my pain, I wouldn't be here, right? I would have gone right back to the world of engineering. But instead, I woke up from the surgery and my right arm was paralyzed. So that was kind of the bottom. And I couldn't use my arm for about 6 months. And I tried all sorts of things, physical therapy and splints and manipulations. Nothing worked. And I went to see this, as I used to say, crazy healer lady. She was an old friend of my Aunt Lauren. And she had had her own journey. And for her, it was a black mold. She had nearly been killed by black mold exposure. And found this process of energy healing, something to do with subconscious blocks that saved her life. And so I went to, and I only went to see her because after a lot of nagging, my aunt was like, Brent, if you go see her, I will pay for the session and take you out to dinner. I was like, all right, I'm in, right? And I didn't expect anything to help me because, again, I had had hundreds of sessions of acupuncture and body work and homeopaths and all these things for years and years, and nothing helped me at all.
And you were lacking hope, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was just there to get a free dinner, right?
And make your aunt happy, probably.
Yeah, get her off my back. I'm like, okay, I need to show you this doesn't help. Nothing can help me. Then you'll leave me alone, right?
And you'll see, I told you
so. Yeah,
so.
exactly. So, I remember Terry talked to me about how the subconscious worked and how subconscious blocks affect us and showed me how to check for blocks and asked me a lot of questions. And it was all very interesting. But I'm like, hey, lady, I'm not here to talk about my feelings, right? I'm here because I can't move my arm and I'm in a lot of pain. And I didn't see how talking about my childhood was going to help with that. But anyhow, she did this block clearing thing with me at the end of the hour. She's like, okay, dear, we're going to heal your arm now. And I'm like, yeah, lady, you and what army, right? And it was the craziest thing. I'm like looking out the window, thinking about what I want to get for lunch on the way home. And as she's kind of went into a trance, and about a minute later, there was this loud crack and pop in my elbow. And, it was like the cracks you normally get with aging, but like times 100. It was like a boom, right? Like someone set off a firecracker.
And you were just
Yep. And this
this
was all done with the mind. There was no touching, no hands-on, nothing you take. Nope. Just conversation across the room. And I remember I was like, whoa. And I remember Terry opened her eyes. She was all, okay, dear, let's try your arm again. And I could not believe it. My paralyzed arm had instantly healed. And so that's the shortest as I can make it version of how this very much dyed-in-the-wool, rational, pragmatist, scientist, and engineer became a full-time energy healing practitioner and spiritual teacher. But I do want to tell the truth here, because there's a lot of people that make a lot of big claims that are full of crap. That it was not, I did one session and all my problems were solved. No. What did happen was my arm, which had been paralyzed by the surgery, instantly healed. All the chronic pain I'd been in that had led me to that, none of that changed immediately. That took a lot more work, a lot more time, a lot more effort. But I had experienced a genuine miracle. And I remember thinking, well, gee, I got to learn this stuff, right?
Because you're a scientific mind.
Yeah.
And
it was kind of funny. At first, I thought, well, this shouldn't be too hard. Because, I had had straight A's in the most difficult major at what's probably the most competitive university on the planet, right? I'm like, how hard can energy healing be? Let me tell you, I was terrible. I was awful at it.
Yeah, I think because you got to get out of here and get
Yes,
into
I was so
here.
much in my mind. And now, no one told me that. I didn't understand it at the time. All I knew was I couldn't do it. So what I decided to do, it was kind of a novel approach. I decided to reverse engineer. So when I started, I figured it would take me maybe 6 months. It actually took almost 12 years. But, so I started working with all the healers and gurus and shamans and sages and such. And little by little, I took very careful notes and observed, and I started to figure out what it is they were doing. And that was my path to unlocking what we call the formula for miracles. And so, and again, it's, I wish it was as simple as, oh, Brent went to a healer and lived happily ever after. Real life isn't that simple, is it? Right?
No, well, I mean, if we lived in a vacuum, it might be,
Sure.
but things keep coming at us. I mean, even I'll give you a personal story. I had a really consistent practice at clearing my energy field. Like I had routines, and my husband had surgery. There less stress in our house. Like there's just stuff going on, and I just got out of my routine. And I went and my friend Dr. Carolyn, she does a monthly angel group, and she saw me yesterday. She's like, "You haven't been doing your light is different. You're not doing your energy clearing." And I was like, "Oh my God, I had it." And it's not a hard thing, but I just wasn't doing it. I wasn't maintaining my light. And I didn't even have any like serious medical conditions that I could speak of other than foggy brain and just feeling like crap. I didn't have any paralysis that got me into healing or energy work, but I knew that it was important and I forgot. And she could see it. That was a huge like light bulb moment for me last night when the angels admonished me for not doing my energy. I'm like, okay, I got it. You're right. You're absolutely right. I usually in the shower, I just ask anything that doesn't serve me to be taken by the water and transmuted. I have a ritual and, it's just like total cleansing, or I even ask the light to come down and clear my aura, but I don't have to get into that. I want to talk about your stuff, but to that point, it's like a constant, you have to constantly, because there's so much coming in. Last week we had the election. There's so much going on in our consciousness, and we are sensitive beings. We take it all on. We just do. Even like you said in your book, you're in utero, you have things. So that's why I wanted to dig in, because it seemed to me like the subconscious was like when she worked on your subconscious level, that's when your arm popped.
Yep.
And it seems like subconscious is like
it's really the key.
The key.
Because again, I had done all sorts of physical treatments, the physical therapy, body work. I had done the alternative stuff, right? Homeopaths, osteopaths, chiropractors, Reiki healing and pranic healing and all these things. And there's nothing wrong with any of it, but none of it moved the needle.
Right. And that's what makes it hard sometimes, because you're like, it's subconscious. Why do I want to dig into it?
Right. Well, only if you want to see real big changes in your life.
Changes.
And so, working with all sorts of amazing people, I've been to at least 100 different training seminars. I've read a couple thousand books, right? Done so many sessions. And what I found was that all these different systems and modalities, law of attraction, energy healing, intuition, and mind power, I see it as technology, and because that's what it is. And what I learned was that there's roughly 3 categories we can put it into, what I call the first, second, and third generation. And the first generation of self-improvement, or consciousness technology is how I think about it, is kind of your typical positive thinking, law of attraction. So they'll tell you to focus on the positive and make a vision board and say your mantras and all that. And again, those are good things to do, but for a lot of people, it doesn't move the needle. A lot of us have spent time and money watching The Secret, going to law of attraction programs, paying coaches, and it's very exciting, but then nothing changes. And that's been the experience, that over 99% of people that do your traditional law of attraction feel they get few or no results. But we know there's something there, right? And that leads us into the second generation. This is where things get interesting. In the second generation of these technologies, we start to develop specific methods to directly work with the subconscious. So examples of what second-gen technologies would be things like Psych-K, emotion code, and body code, or theta healing, and things like that, NLP. And with the second generation, this is where things get exciting, because this is where we start to see medical miracles occur. This is where you start to see not just 1 in 1,000 people, but like 1 in 10 have legitimate life-changing miracles. And I have seen roughly 2,000 miracles in my clients in the 20-some years I've done this. So it's not everyone, it's not all the time, but they happen. People heal instantly from cancer or migraines or back pain or whatever it is. And so the subconscious is key. If you really want to see results, you almost always have to engage the subconscious, and that's the difference. The trouble is the second generation has its limits too. There are some things it's very good at, others it's not so good at. So if me or someone I knew was diagnosed with cancer or had an injury or something like that, those are the tools I go to. They're very good for physical health. What they don't do is they don't have the ability to make a difference in terms of presence, confidence, charisma. And in practical terms, this is more about relationships, money, and career. So, I've done so many law of attraction programs, positive thinking weekends, right? For the most part, you're just kind of wasting your money. I would tell my students, just go read Think and Grow Rich. You're all set. Everything you ever need to know. The second generation is really cool because that's when we start shifting the subconscious and seeing miracles. But it's very difficult. One of the biggest challenges for many people is money and career. How do I make more money? And I found the second gen tools, other than occasional sort of lucky breakthroughs, don't make a big difference. And so what happened on my journey very quickly was after I worked with Terry, I spent time learning to be a healer, took all sorts of trainings, right, practice groups, and started my professional business over 20 years ago now. And in the next 5 years, I made a lot of progress. I got off a disability. I started making money. I started dating again. I was able to reduce my pain. It never totally disappeared. But I'd say on an average day, my pain went from like an 8, which is pretty crippling and life-shattering, down to maybe a 4, which is annoying and limiting, but night and day difference from an 8,
But
right?
yeah, like the difference, yeah.
I could
You
drive
had
my
hope.
car across town. I could go out to concerts, right? All these things I couldn't do before.
Yeah.
And it was great. I was able to start saving money and investing. I paid off a gigantic credit card debt, and that was all great. And then 5 years later, my life blew up again. And long
And that
story
was
short,
around the financial thing again, right?
Yep, it was around money and love, which both come out of the same energy center in the body. They're very closely connected.
The solar plexus.
The chakra, actually, second chakra, the navel chakra.
You got your root chakra, then
Yep, the root is survival.
The survival.
And then the navel chakra is a sensuality, pleasure, your experience of life. Because that's what money does, right?
Right.
Gives you a better experience of life, as do relationships. And so long story short, I suffered the worst heartbreak of my whole life. At the same time, I hired unknowingly a criminal to be my financial advisor. And he not only robbed me blind and stole every penny from me, he had also, without my knowledge, he had refinanced my home and taken out loans.
He had borrowed against your, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. And long story short, I was over $1 million in debt. And so
okay, I'm blown away here because the universe was testing these areas of your life. Like you were there, and then you had betrayal and loss of love, which wasn't even realized yet, just your confidence, like that relationship. And then you built yourself up again, and the game of life is just like, hell no, we're going to rip this out. There was something that needed to get triggered in you. And I applaud you because you didn't give up. You kept playing. And it's amazing.
I'm not sure it's worthy of applause, but it's more out of desperation and lack of options than other things. But yeah,
But do you see the parallel? You started making these video games, and then your life was set up like a reality game where you're like, and I'm not belittling your situation at all. I'm just like, I'm blown away that you had these situations that kept pummeling you, and you're like, I got to figure this out. You hired your relationship coach, and you had realized you had to declare bankruptcy, and you're a victim of fraud, right? Like that, Yeah, I mean, anyone would do that. Right. Rightly so. I hope, did that person go to jail? Okay. Justice. Yeah. No, and it didn't get your relationships.
Long
Yeah.
story short, I had to declare bankruptcy and it was devastating. I'd been
Absolutely.
through so much. I'd worked so hard to rebuild my life and now it was all gone again. And this time I didn't even have disability to fall back on. That was gone too. And so it was funny that my life coach, his name was Brian, I worked with him for over 100 hours, mainly around dating, and he couldn't do anything with me. And so he said, well, Brent, we're going to have to kick you up the food chain to the master. And it's a true story that it was, 16 years ago now? On Monday, I declared bankruptcy. On Tuesday, I had my first, what they call movement session with Carl. And I went down and I met him by the beach. And basically, he was this crazy old guy that had me put on rollerblades and he videotaped me skating in circles in the parking lot by the beach.
You're like, have I gone insane? Like, this is really happening. You rented your rollerblades and he sat in the car. I was reading your book and I was like, oh my God, I'm just picturing this. He's like, I can see him hanging out the window. He didn't get a car and you're doing circles.
I'm like, rollerblading in circles for about 20 minutes. And then he invited me into the car and he played back the tape. And basically what it felt like, he just ripped me a new one. It was all this criticism about my energy leaking here and there and this myth and that myth. And I was really annoyed because I'm like, dude, I know I'm a mess, right? I just went bankrupt yesterday.
And you paid him $500.
And I paid him $500 for the privilege of being told that my life was a mess.
To be told that you're an energy leak and you're...
Yeah, exactly. There's all these things wrong with my energy field and this and that. And so I remember I went home kind of upset and annoyed. And I called Brian to chew his butt off. I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? I just spent my last $500 to have this crazy guy yell at me about how I'm leaking energy, right? And I was upset because he hadn't done anything to fix me.
You can't make this stuff up.
Right? And so I remember Brian, he goes, Brent, I get it. He says, do me this favor, give it 3 weeks. And he goes, if nothing shifts or changes in 3 weeks, let me know. I'll see if I can make it right to you. And I'm like, okay. And I remember I put on my calendar 3 weeks out, call Brian, chew his butt off about sending me to this kooky guy that took my last $500.
Back to I told you so, Brent.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, all right, gotcha. But it was crazy. It didn't even take 3 weeks. It didn't even take 3 days. So I had my first session with Carl on Tuesday. And through a whole long story, we won't spend time on here. By Thursday night, I had made over $50,000 and I had never experienced anything like that before.
So amazing. Well, we just had 11/11.
And I was like, wow. Right?
Was that Sunday was 11/11?
Yes. Monday. Yesterday was 11/11,
yes.
I think. Or no.
Yes.
Yeah, Monday, I think was 11/11. Yeah.
Monday was, yeah, that's right. Because my niece's birthday is on the 10th and that was Sunday. Yeah. So when I was reading your book, I was like, oh my God. And then I realized that the year was 2008.
Yep.
Which 2008 adds up to 10, which is another 1. So you had 5 1s in the whole date. 11/11/2008 was 5 1s and a 0.
The date of my first meeting Carl was...
Yeah. So that, to me, the angels are always talking to me, and you were saying how it's new beginnings is repeating ones, but to me it's like that you're supported, that good things are in the, happening. Like whenever I see 11/11 on the clock, I'm like, abundance and love, like manifest it. Like, these codes that repeat that we notice are so powerful. So I couldn't help but interject that even adding up the year was another 1 tacked on to the end, which, this stuff just, like you said, you can't make it up. So you had a very outstanding week that you're like, okay, I get it, answer or call received, right?
Here's what happened, that by the time I had first met Carl, I had been doing energy healing full time for over 5 years. I had learned, I'm certified in like 27 different modalities, right? I had learned all these things and I had done so much training and research. I could look at almost any kind of healing, intuitive process, law of attraction, and kind of pigeonhole it because they are all very similar. in the same way that all combustion cars work on similar principles, right? Whether it's a minivan or an SUV or a compact car, they all have similar engine designs. But when I worked with Carl, it didn't make any sense to me. It was something totally different that I'd never seen before.
It's completely subconscious because you were just doing a movement, right? There
Yeah,
wasn't
and again, I didn't understand it. And it took me about 5 years just to have any sense of what was going on. But as I slowly figured out how it worked, this was my introduction to what I call the third generation of consciousness technology.
Okay.
And it's very different in that you're still working the subconscious, but it's a more physical, visceral thing. It's not all bound up in words and language. So most energy healing processes have you check for beliefs or say mantras or some kind of process or therapy bound up in talk and stories. The third generation is not that. It's done through movement and entrainment. And if you've never done it before, I'll just warn you, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't fit in the New Age box at all. But it takes the power to a whole nother level. Because I had done hundreds of sessions of NLP and hypnosis and theta healing and Psych K and emotion, all the things we're familiar with. Didn't change much of anything in terms of money, career, relationships.
Right. And that's where you kept getting sucker punched.
Exactly. Because ultimately what it comes down to is the first and second gen tools can't get you out of your head. They, if used improperly, can put you deeper.
I hear you, because then you're like, well, I know better. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Or why do I feel this way? I've dealt with this, Wow.
And we call it movement feedback holography.
Okay.
For very specific reasons, because number one, it's done through physical movements. It could be rollerblading or shaking your hands or scooping, or it could be anything. And a trained facilitator can watch your movement and, I like to say, see right into your source code. They can see the energies, the myths that are playing out in your life, which most of us are oblivious to. And that's what Carl did for me that made a huge breakthrough with money. He was able to tell me exactly what was going on inside of me. And we call it holography because everything we do holographically represents the entirety of who we are.
Yeah, I read in your book, it's how you do anything is how you do everything.
And that's why people will say, well, what's the best movement? My answer is it doesn't matter.
It's everything.
That's right. I could watch you brushing your teeth. I could watch you cooking dinner. I could watch you swimming in the pool or bouncing on a trampoline or playing video games, anything. You're bringing the same archetypal energies to everything you do.
So I know you did more than one session with Carl, but that spontaneous result, do you think that was the universe saying you're on the right track, keep going? Or
I think so.
Because you just watched yourself. It wasn't like you said, okay, I'm going to do this movement
and that was exactly why I was upset. Because it seemed like he was just criticizing me and not doing anything to fix the problems.
But your subconscious interpreted his
yes,
criticisms.
And this is why it took me years to understand what was happening. But the short answer is yes. If you're in the proper attention state, when you receive the feedback, the blocks clear themselves effortlessly. And so there was really something that happened. And really, to put it in simple terms, Carl showed me what I learned from him was that when we're born, we're full of life energy. A little baby, right? And we might call it chi or ki or prana or life force or divine flow, all kind of the same thing. What happens, though, is as we get older, we squeeze it out. Pain, trauma, abuse, disappointment, loss, etc. The metaphor I like is it's squeezing the toothpaste out of the tube.
Yeah, and you notice like people start to get all contracted and small as life comes down on them. And to me, it's like the biggest thing is just keeping your space, like expanding.
It's challenging.
Space.
And so metaphorically, when we're born, we got a toothpaste that's full of, our tube is full of toothpaste.
Full. Yeah.
It's really easy to squeeze out the toothpaste when it's full, right? So we have plenty of life energy. But again, as we become adults, pain, loss, failure, trauma, frustration, disappointment, each of these starts squeezing out more of the toothpaste.
And environmental trauma, like Lyme disease, and poisoning, and
chemicals, and emotional toxicity, and all sorts of things. And we all know what it's like when there's no toothpaste left in the tube. And you're laying on it and rolling on it and pressing on it, trying to get just a little bit out so you can go to the store tomorrow, right? That was me when I met Carl. I had lost all the life force out of myself. I was operating totally from the mind, but I had been disconnected from the quantum field around me. And that's how I could work so hard and have so much talent and ability and achieve almost nothing.
Because your container was all shrunk.
Yes, it was all shrunk up.
For it to go.
There was no toothpaste left in the tube. What I learned from Carl was how to get the toothpaste back in the tube. And that's why I think I was so desperate for life force, for connection, that just that one session made enough of a difference that I started making money. And I'll never forget the first thing he asked me when I met him down at the beach. I said, "Hi, are you Carl?" He goes, "Yes." "Are you Brent?" Okay, that was the first thing he asked me was, "Are you Brent?" The second thing he asked me was, "Are you ready to add a zero to your income?" And I thought it was just like an icebreaker, a joke. No, dude was serious.
And you said yes, or you said
I said
so,
sure.
were you?
I think I made a joke out of it. I'm like, sure, I'll add a lot of zeros on the left side of my income, right? Because 0, 1 is the same as 1. But he was serious that many people that worked with him,
I can't go any further.
Yes, would make 10 times more money than they used to. Now, of course, results vary. I did not get a 10x increase. For me, it was more like 3 or 4 times. But from when I first started working with them, the next year I had made 3 to 4 times more money than I ever had before. And again, I don't want to say it's not always as easy as 1 hour and then your life is perfect. But he showed me how to get the life force back into myself.
And how to connect back with the quantum.
Yes. And that the life force
all of us
is what connects us into the quantum field or the divine flow. So when you live in the mind full of trauma and pain and you're closed off and scarcity, basically you've disconnected yourself from the flow of life. And you can't receive these gifts.
I'm having a squirrel moment. You have to pardon me. But do you ever watch like professional tennis at all?
Not really. My dad was big into tennis in the 70s during the tennis craze. Due to the nature of my injuries, tennis was never an option.
Yeah. I was just thinking of one of my favorite players. He's from Russia, Daniil Medvedev. I think he's an amazing person. He's so well-spoken, and he's just, he doesn't have the flow that a lot of tennis players like Federer has. Like Federer, you watch him, it's like watching a ballerina. Mm-hmm. But Medvedev, he's an alchemist out there. He just makes things happen. But this last week, he got very frustrated with the court. Sometimes he gets frustrated with court conditions, but he got so mentally broke down, probably physically. I just wanted you to watch. I wanted to see if you'd seen him play, but he decided to return a serve with his racket handle going forward instead of the frame, because he's just like, I might as well just use my handle, because he just had a mental breakdown. He said, well, later on, I read that he said it was just the wear and tear of the circuit, that his schedule was so packed that he sort of just melted down. And I felt bad because it's not usually how he competes, but I knew there was something going on. But, I was wondering if when you watch sports, basically, can you tell who's going to win? Like when you're watching football by their energy patterns. And
yes, in fact, one of my students, we will sometimes watch MMA matches. And we can usually tell who's going to win by reading their energy as they're coming out. That's because it's a little hard to articulate, but when someone is very connected into the quantum field, they have a different quality. It's hypnotic. And it's funny because Carl was an openly gay man his whole life, but he loved to talk about strippers as a metaphor. And he would say, if you go to the strip club, the dancers that make the most money are not the prettiest. They don't have the best bodies, nor are they the best dancers. They're the ones that are very present, very connected. They're full of energy and life force. And it has this hypnotic effect that you will just watch and get lost in it and not think about it.
And you just want to be around it.
Yes, there is a natural attraction to it. Yes, it does.
Attraction.
That's exactly it. And that's what I've become an expert in, is that inner game. That
so
if we look
coaching strippers too now? I'm just kidding.
You know what? I would be happy to coach strippers. I'll work with anybody that wants to improve.
I'm just
As
kidding.
long as you're not hurting anybody in your job, I
Right.
don't care, right?
No
If you're like,
judgment.
work for a drug cartel, kidnapping children, no, I won't work with you. No, thank you,
Right.
right? But
Right.
beyond that, absolutely, because we all need help in healing.
We all do.
And if we look at entrepreneurs, you can have people that are smart, they're driven, they're hardworking, they're ambitious, they have good ideas, but it never clicks.
Yeah, they're checking off boxes.
That's right. They're so focused on the outer game, they nail all the boxes, but they don't make success. And it's that inner game. It's really a matter of how much life force do you have in your body? How connected are you to the flow? And that was the same thing I mentioned with my dating coach. We joked about it. He goes, Brent, I don't get it. You check all the boxes. You're tall. You're not terrible looking. You have a cool car. Yeah. You have hair. You own property. You love animals. And most importantly of all, I was looking for a serious relationship.
Yeah. You were ready. Right.
Yeah. I couldn't find a girlfriend to save my life. I had over 200 dates with over 100 women over 3 years and could not even find a short-term relationship. And again, that's the answer. So people that feel frustrated, why are you not seeing the big success? Why are the people around you that aren't as smart as you, that don't work as hard, that don't have as much talent, why are they getting the promotions and the raises? Why does everything just click into place for others, but not for you? That's who I specialize in. And because our culture is so fixated on the outer game. So for example, let's say you're an investor, right? You read your investment reports, you pick stocks, you allocate your portfolio, you check all the boxes and follow the rules. But that alone won't bring success if you don't have the inner game. And that's what I want to offer to people, that what I teach is really a hybrid of second and third generation. That for some issues, I use the more traditional tools. We call it digging, get into the subconscious, find a block, clear a block. That's very powerful. But on top of that, we need to learn how to get you back into the flow of life force. And there is no other process I've found. And I've studied so many modalities, it's ridiculous. I got a folder up in my file cabinet that's like 1.5 inches thick with all the certificates from all the things I've learned and done, right? All these weekend trainings. The only thing that really moves the needle is this movement work.
So Carl, he's passed.
Yes, he passed, unfortunately.
And he left his legacy to you, to guardian, to share.
And it's so crazy. Again, he couldn't have scripted this stuff, right? That he told me years after I'd met him. He goes, Brent, he admitted, he goes, Brent, when I first met you, you were more in your head, more disconnected than anyone I'd ever worked with. And he started doing this full time in the 70s.
You were his opus.
Yes, he had been doing it for like 35 years full time at that point. And it's crazy how it worked out. I ended up being the only person he ever gave permission to teach and practice his work. So it was the same thing when I did my first training with Terry. There was about 100 people there. If you had lined us up in terms of ability, I was dead last by a good margin, right? If it was a marathon, I was the guy that crosses the finish line 4 days later when everyone's forgotten there was a marathon, right? That was me. But what I want everyone to know that one of the things I learned in martial arts, there's a saying, a black belt is just a white belt that didn't give up. So if it's difficult, if you're frustrated, that's okay. If you keep at it, you will be ahead of all those that have more talent, more ability, but don't follow through. But it does require us to open our minds and try something new. As you told me 30 years ago, I'd be teaching energy healing and intuition. I would have thought it was a joke. I'm like, what? Where's the hidden cameras, right? But, this is real. This is our life. And for people, especially if you're stuck, low self-confidence, cycles of addiction, can't make money, if your life seems like you have all the ingredients, but it's not coming together, that's who I like to work with. I have a range of people that I'm not right for everyone. First, just know I'm pretty intense. I'm obsessed with the truth. And I have minimal tolerance for nonsense. So this is why a lot of the New Age stuff doesn't really click with me. Too much ritual and pageantry and show, right? I'm about what really works. And you have to be willing to look in the dark places you don't want to look at.
Right.
Like
that's
you had said earlier. Why would I want to look in my subconscious? There's a bunch of dark, nasty stuff there. Well, that's right. You
It's
have
like
to be
cleaning out
willing.
the bottom of your fruit and
Yes.
veggie drawers. You know,
Yep.
you sort of put stuff in there, and then every like 6 months, you're like, "Ooh, I probably
Yep.
there's something like gooey and orange like sticking to the bottom, and we better."
Yep.
I
I remember.
we're coming up on our time. I did want to pick your brain about
Sure.
what is a hologram or
So the
holograph.
hologram, what it means is that a part represents the whole.
Okay.
And so if we take, for example, a laser hologram, where you have a holographic image, you run a laser through and it creates a 3D image. A hologram is very different than a regular picture. So let's say we take a car magazine and tear out a picture of a car. Okay, so if we take that picture and we tear the picture in half, you have the left half of the car on one side and the right half of the car on the other, right? A hologram doesn't operate that way. If you were to take a laser hologram and tear it in half, what you would get is the entire car on both sides, but in lower resolution. And so we see the holographic aspect of life all over the place. For example, live blood cell analysis, something I've done, fascinating to do. They take a drop, they prick your finger, take a couple drops of blood, look at it under a microscope. By looking at one drop of blood, a good analyst can tell you a lot of what's going on with your health. They can tell you what's wrong with your diet, whether you're exercising, all these things from one drop of blood. Why is that? Every drop of blood holographically represents the whole body. That's how it works. And you mentioned earlier, how you do anything is how you do everything. That's how Carl could watch me rollerblade and see exactly what was happening in my life, which was so amazing. Why?
Yeah.
It's the same you bring to everything.
And, this is blowing my mind because, like, that guy who's in prison, he was needed in your holograph to show you what your potential was, to
Yes.
bring out what you have to bring. And without him, like, we're all connected. Like, even if we don't appreciate the situation, it's all to activate or for us to run from or whatever it is. We're all one. Like, we're all going through so much all the time, but we're not isolated from anything.
I kind of had to meet Carl in one of my darkest hours.
Mm-hmm.
Had I found him when my life was going well, I would have just been like, this guy's a kook. It's weird, forgotten about it, on to the next thing.
Yeah, you would have been like, weirdo.
Yeah, this guy's weird,
on.
wasted $500, life moves on.
Right.
But because I was so desperate, I had no idea what to do. It really felt like my life was over. I was open to what he brought me. And so, yes, had I not been broken down so much, I could not have been put back together. And there's actually a Japanese art form. The name escapes me, but what they do is...
when they break the pottery?
Yes, they take the pottery and vases and they smash it, and they glue it back together.
And it's more beautiful because usually they put gold in between or whatever.
And that is life. That's what I do with people. That once your pottery is broken, will it be the same? No.
No.
You will not be the same as you were before, after your accident, abuse, trauma, disease, etc. But if you know how to put yourself back together, you can be more magnificent, more beautiful, more valuable. And so you take a vase that cost you $40 at the grocery store and you break it and glue it back together, and it sells for $40,000. That's what I like to do with people.
Yeah.
Can I make you exactly as you were before? No, that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know how to put yourself together the right way, you can reach higher heights than you could have even imagined possible.
Yeah. And that's what I loved about reading, was like, you're helping people remember their divinity, remember, I like to call it their God spark.
Yes. We've lost that. And so I do want to make a special offer for everyone listening and watching today, that anybody that wants to learn more, come to my website at awakeningdynamics.com, and you'll see a button says like a book a time podcast special. Every person listening, I will give you a free 15-minute discovery call to get to know you a little bit. And I'll tell you if I think you're a good fit for this work. And if not, I'll recommend something else. Because again, I'm not for everyone, but for people that, need what I have, I want to find you. I want to help you thrive, heal your body, make more money, take your life to that next level. And, the poet Rumi famously said, without a guide, a journey of 3 weeks will take 100 years.
Well, it's so generous of you.
And that's what I want to
it.
do for people that are serious about moving forward. And of course, it's going to take time and money and effort, right? There is no magic wand that someone waves over you and fixes all your problems. But if you're serious about moving forward, about creating something greater, book some time with me. I want to get to know you. And if you're the right fit, watch out. We can do some really amazing things,
And it's about tapping into your gifts. It's not about
Yes.
filling a cookie cutter or checking
Right.
off boxes. It's finding what's
I
really
hate that
there.
when everyone tries to force you into use this program and this group call here and no, every person I work with, their path is unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even come with an offer because I don't know what it is. I need to get to know each person first. Only after that can I go, okay, here's what you need. And so that's why I do it this way. It does take a lot of my time, but this is the sacrifice I'm happy to make to find the right people to help them change their lives. Because let's face it, the world needs us. The world needs us to be the best us that we can be.
Yes.
And that's what I want to do.
We deserve to show up in our highest light.
Yes.
It's
So if you're curious to learn more, you're welcome to buy my book, watch my YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. But, I'm happy to give you 15 minutes to talk to you, see if you're a good fit.
Okay. And I'll put your website as a link in the show notes. And,
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a delight.
It's been great to be here. I hope if we can reach just one person and help them make a shift, I say it's all worth it.
Yeah. Well, let's hold that. I love it. Thanks.